time I was here, I can't remember how many years ago, or a long time ago. I remember people saying, will you come back? When will you come back? And I said, I'm leaving on a jet plane, don't know when I'll be back again. and yeah, it's been many years. So, we don't have that much time together. I'd like to spend the time as usefully as possible, so I'd like to spend most of the time in discussion so that I can be sure that I'm talking about things that you're interested in listening about or to. But let's begin with a short period of meditation. Then I'll offer a few reflections, shortish kind of talk, and then open it up for discussion. So for questions, you can argue with me or teach me something, whatever. No holds barred session. So let's begin with a session of meditation. So meditation is just everyday life with a few tweaks. It's not something special, it's not a magic bullet, it's not a panacea. But it forms the heart of our life as Buddhists. It is an opportunity for us to practice the Dhamma in an environment where we try to minimize obstructive conditions and maximize supportive conditions. That should be the only difference between what we're doing when we're sitting with our eyes closed and what we're doing in the rest of our life, because it's just one mind, one life, not two different minds, two different lives. So we sit, and the first thing to look at is what are our raw materials for this session of meditation. Is there some confusion, agitation in the mind, some dullness, or is there enthusiasm, interest, curiosity? Check that out, because we have to just do a little bit of work on our motivation before we start to apply our minds to our meditation objects. The mental state which we seek to cultivate at the beginning of the meditation session is called chanda, which is wise or intelligent desire. We cultivate this through reflection. For example, we may bring to mind the image of a great teacher, someone whose example inspires us and whom we aim to emulate. We may, of course, turn our minds to the Lord Buddha himself, or we may have a particularly powerful reflection, one that will bring up energy whenever we turn our mind towards it. For example, the reflection that as long as there is defilement in the mind, there can never be any true happiness. It will always be flawed in some respect. And defilement never disappears by itself or by divine providence. The only way that defilement will cease, will be eliminated is through right effort. So if we are truly committed to the practice of the abandonment of the unwholesome, development of the wholesome, purification of the mind, this is what we should be doing right now. This is the most important thing. So we may all have different kinds of reflections, but the result should be similar. We feel interest and commitment and enthusiasm for this practice of meditation. This practice of meditation is the application of right effort. We have 4 challenges in our lives. At least for Buddhists who approach life through the lens of the 4 Noble Truths. Taking the 4 Noble Truths as our basic working hypothesis, we conclude that we need to develop certain life skills. So this is how I like to talk about meditation. We're developing life skills. We're educating ourselves. We're exploring our minds. It's not just applying a technique to get a result. So the first thing that we need to learn is how to protect our mind from unwholesome mental states, negative mental states that are not yet arisen in our minds. How can we create a relationship between the mind and the meditation object such that negative mental states cannot intrude? Given the difficulty of that task, we also need strategies, we also need skills and experience in recognizing and abandoning negative mental states, particularly the hindrances that have arisen. In meditation, we have the opportunity to introduce into the mind wholesome mental states that have not yet arisen, beginning with mindfulness, clear comprehension, balanced, appropriate effort, relaxed effort, and from there proceeding to jhana factors or enlightenment factors. And lastly, we seek how to develop the skills to nurture those positive, wholesome mental states and bring them to maturity. The breath is a very popular meditation object, has been since the time of the Buddha himself. One of the reasons for this is that the breath is always available, but another reason is that it's totally uninteresting unless you're having difficulty breathing. So we can spend long times enjoying movies and TV series and entertainments without thoughts of the past and present, without being disturbed by physical discomfort. But that's not samadhi. And the reason being that we are merely passengers. The narrative makes us smile, makes us laugh, makes us frown, makes us cry even. All the work has been done by the narrative. We're just passengers. So although the mind is absorbed it's in a semi-hypnotic state. It's not cultivating the four right efforts. The breath is not an object, it's not a phenomena that draws you towards it. It doesn't entice you, it doesn't seduce you, it's not interesting at all. So the only way that you are able to sustain awareness on the breath is through intelligent, relaxed effort. It has to come from you. This is why it's so powerful and so beneficial. Now the body and the mind provide us with a very efficient and immediate feedback system. We are learning how to put forth relaxed effort on the breath. Now if we start to experience some headache or constriction in the chest, this is feedback. This is useful information. This is your body and mind telling you too much effort, not enough relaxation. If you're finding difficulty to sustain the mind on the object, drifting off into memory or imagination or becoming sleepy, this is the body telling you too much relaxation, not enough effort. So as meditators, we're observers, we're learners. There's nothing outside of the meditation process impacting it in negative ways. Everything is part of the meditation. So if we're having difficulty sustaining attention on the breath, that doesn't mean that we're hopeless at this or we don't have what it takes to be a meditator. This is it. This is what it's about. We're learning about our mind. Well, why does our mind jump off from the present moment into memory, into imagination? Where does the mind like to go when it's bored with the present reality? When we seek distraction, where does the mind most enjoy traveling to? Everything is teaching us. Meditation is a learning process. And we learn how to learn in the meditation, and then in daily life we apply those same life skills that we learn in meditation. There's a seamless flow of mindfulness. The difference in daily life is the object varies. We have to be wise in adapting to different objects of mindfulness. But mindfulness, awareness itself, should be uninterrupted. So we come back to this first challenge we have. What kind of relationship will most sustain this mindful awareness? Enjoyment is, I think, a far more skillful articulation of the meditation process than concentration. Once you talk about concentrating on an object, then immediately you have this sense of constriction and narrowness. But we're enjoying. Can you enjoy an inhalation? Can you enjoy an inhalation to the extent that you prefer it to a memory, to an idea? What quality of awareness? can we enjoy the breath? Not as in the way you'd enjoy some delicious meal, but the way you would enjoy a Japanese garden. Enjoy a subtle and sophisticated work of art. The breath, the more closely you look at the breath, the more subtleties it displays. So finding a way of enjoying one in-breath, one out-breath. That's the duration of your meditation session. And start again. A new inhalation, a new exhalation. Can you be present to your experience? Because learning how to be present to your life, to enjoy, to appreciate breath, means learning how to appreciate your life. So as I outlined earlier on, I plan to speak for a while and then open it up for questions and discussion. In 1984, after I'd been training in Thailand as a bhikkhu, as a novice bhikkhu for 6 years, almost 6 years, I went back to England to visit my parents, my family, for the first time. As we were driving home in family car, my father and my mother, in the front, I said, I think I told a joke, and I just saw my father's shoulders, just like this. And he said, at least he hasn't lost his sense of humor. This was his only fear about me becoming a monk. Other than that, he was okay with it. So after I'd been some time with my family, I went down to London for a ceremony. It was a Wesak ceremony. And then a group of us caught last train to southwest England, to Devon, where a new branch monastery of Chitta, at that time the Amaravati monastery had not yet come into existence, and this small branch monastery in Devon had been established by a monk who I'd known since he lived in Thailand. So it was about 9 o'clock that we got off the train at this small station, and standing outside the station when a car stopped and all these young people ran across the road straight towards us. And then one of them said to me, "Have you heard about Jesus?" And I said, "Yeah." And so they were swarming around us. And one of them said to me, "You're Buddhist, is that right?" I said, "Yes." And, "What do you believe in?" And I thought about it, and I didn't have any answer. And I said, "Ask him, he's the senior monk." Which is what you do when you're junior in Sangha. But it was like a small epiphany for me, and an epiphanet, an epiphanino. It's just a small, not anything particularly profound, but I realized I've given my life, I plan to spend my whole life as a Buddhist monk. This is everything to me, and yet I can't explain what I believe in. Why not? Well, because I've never thought about it in those terms. Subsequently, I started to speak about this in public more and more, and to propose this idea that religions can be seen as belonging to different species or different families, and that when we use the word religion to mean all religions, then we make some serious mistakes, particularly given that the religions of the West, given the hegemony and the prestige of Western culture, that the idea of what a religion is considered to be like a template that everything else has to fit into. So sometimes people, it's Buddhism not a religion, it's a philosophy or it's a way of life, meaning it's not a religion in the terms that I'm familiar with. So my proposal, my idea has been that the religions that grew up in the Middle East can be considered a family of religions, although they don't get on very well with each other. They share the same basic idea of what a religion is. And I would summarize this to say these religions are essentially belief systems. So this is the belief system family of religion, the belief system species of religion. The religions that grew up in India, most particularly Buddhism, are not belief system religions. They are, I would characterize them, particularly Buddhism, as an education system religion. So this is a radically different idea of what a religion is. And so if you look at a education system religion through the lens, through the eyes of a belief system, it's just confusing. You don't get it. So people say, what? Oh, you're a Buddhist, what do you believe in? The assumption is that it's basically the same kind of thing, but they believe in Jesus or whatever, and you believe in Buddha. And then people will look for like this distinctive or sort of salient teaching which distinguishes it. Oh, so you believe in reincarnation, is that right? So my view on this is that Buddhism is not a belief system, but that there is a role for faith. And any of you who have studied the suttas will know that the Buddha gave great importance to sattha, which we usually translate as faith, sometimes as conviction. But it's important, I think, to recognize that faith in an education system religion is a different beast altogether to faith in a belief system religion. Now, faith in a belief system religion is, I don't mean to be dismissive here, but it is a dead end or a cul-de-sac. What I mean by that is you have two choices, believe or not believe. There's no point at which you can prove whether or not the objects of faith, the dogmas that you believe in, are true. And so in a belief system religion you have a shadow, and the shadow is doubt. Doubt's the enemy. In an education system religion like Buddhism, then faith is in provable propositions about the human condition. And we could summarize these very most succinctly perhaps that we as Buddhists believe that we can abandon the unwholesome, we can develop the wholesome, we can purify our minds. We believe that human beings become sublime through training of body, speech and mind, using the Eightfold Path as our tools, as our means of education. So here you can see that faith is not static, it's not, to use the phrase, a dead end, because these are working hypotheses or propositions about you. And so the responsibility is not to protect that belief from doubt, but to put it to the test. And we become Buddhists by putting the Buddha's teachings to the test of experience. You may have read or heard how the Buddha said he appreciated the offerings of flowers and incense and so on and so forth, but what really pleased him was the offering of practice, meaning the determination and the effort to put his teachings to the test. On one occasion, the Buddha said to the Sangha, the members of the Sangha, I'm teaching you to abandon the unwholesome, develop the wholesome, because it's something you can do. If you couldn't do it, I wouldn't teach it. So when we start to apply the tools provided us by the Lord Buddha to our daily life, to our meditation, at least in my experience, the response is, yeah, that really makes sense. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, of course. Why didn't I think of that before? Oh, now it's so obvious. Yeah, wow. And this is continuous. Yes, 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 yes. And that's an accumulation of those yeses based upon a clear-sighted examination of the Buddha's teachings, putting them into practice and seeing what happens. That sattha, the word we use for faith in Buddhism, appears in our mind. So in the five indriyas, the five powers, we have this connection, and the teaching of the five powers is explained very, very beautifully, that it can either be considered in the form of a gradual progression, meaning that you start off with this faith, and then that leads to the effort to test whether the objects of faith do in fact stand up to the test of experience. And when we are putting forth that effort based on that kind of faith or confidence, mindfulness appears. And when we are applying mindfulness consistently and in an uninterrupted fashion, samadhi arises. So what's the connection between sati, mindfulness in the Buddhist sense, and samadhi, concentration, or I prefer just to use the word samadhi. Samadhi is a name given for certain changes in the mind that occur when we are able to sustain an unbroken sequence of mindful moments. So there's a sense of solidity, of well-being, of clarity, of energy. There's a sharpness to the mind and a softness to the mind. There's a flexibility to the mind. So if the mind is focused and one-pointed, but it's very stiff and unwieldy, that's not samadhi. That stiffness and unwieldiness is a hindrance to samadhi. And samadhi developed anesthetized It's a difficult word. For a moment, for a period of time, our habitual reactions to experience, to sense experience, to inner mental states, and provides an equanimity and a solidity and stability that allows us to see the nature of body and mind in the present moment, in real time. And by doing so, to reduce and eventually eliminate altogether the idea of an independent, self-existent entity who is the owner of the body and mind. This is what we call wisdom. So we start off with this faith that we can do this, faith in our human potential to abandon defilement, develop wholesome virtues, purify the mind using the Eightfold Path. We put forth the effort to see whether or not that's a valid proposition, whether or not we can actually do this. And that effort results in mindfulness. Mindfulness matures into samadhi, and samadhi into wisdom. But in the commentaries, there's another way of looking at these five qualities, a really elegant way, in which you imagine that third quality of mindfulness as a fulcrum. And then you imagine on one end of the seesaw, you have faith, and at the other end, wisdom. And then in between, you have effort and samadhi. And here the teaching is that you balance the faculties. So faith energizes, but it doesn't mean that we throw away our critical intelligence. We're still looking, we're still skeptical, curious. Those are not blasphemous, irreligious qualities. They really need those, particularly at the beginning. But that kind of critical thinking mind can also take us into rabbit holes and round in circles and waste a lot of time. And so the element of faith balances that. Because faith's dynamic, it cuts through that. With the samadhi, we can develop a disinclination to follow the path of wisdom. And so that effort is something that's energizing the mind. It's not that you get stuck in samadhi, because if it's samadhi, there is, by definition, mindfulness, clear comprehension, awareness, non-attachment. If there's attachment at that moment, it's not samadhi, it's a contradiction in terms. The problem being that as one emerges from samadhi, and so many meditators fall into this trap, they can develop some really clear, stable, focused states of mind, yet when the mental activity reappears, they just conclude, well, that's the end of the meditation, and get up. But that's when the next phase of the meditation begins. Or emerging from that mental state, that focused state of samadhi, just want to go back into it again. So when we say someone's like stuck in samadhi, it's not means in samadhi they're stuck, but it means that coming out of it, they want to go back in, and they just want to stay there. So that's the danger. But samadhi has so many wonderful benefits. Let me just say something about those now, because in talking about Buddhist practice, there's a long-held tradition, isn't there, of talking about samatha and vipassana, as if these were two different paths of practice. And that's how it's taught in some monastic traditions, some meditation traditions. in Thailand, in Thai forest tradition, then look at it slightly differently. Look at like the mind which is progressing along the Eightfold Path is one which needs different qualities. And the analogy that Luang Por Cha and Ajahn Chah would give is of an axe. And for an axe to do its work well, it needs both weight and sharpness. The blade needs to be sharp, but the axe head needs to be heavy. So these two things are inseparable. If you had a sharp edge and no weight, you wouldn't have a very good axe. If you had weight and no sharp edge, then you wouldn't be able to cut anything. So you need a balance of those faculties. And so samatha is like the weight of the axe, and vipassana is like the sharpness of the blade. They work together. And sometimes one comes to the forefront and the other is supporting it, and other times it changes. But wherever you have samadhi, you have a wisdom faculty there, at least in a subsidiary supporting role. When you have vipassana, you have samadhi supporting it in a subsidiary role. But let's just take the case of a meditation session or a series of meditation sessions where one is able to develop this very firm, stable samadhi to the level that there's no thinking at all, no sense impingement, which is an incredible sense of bliss and well-being, and it's a sense of kind of brightness and naturalness of the mind. And withdrawing from that, and then after the meditation is over, just sitting and digesting that. This is also an important part of meditation, reviewing and learning from your experiences, learning from the learning that took place during the meditation. And if you do that, one of the things you can observe is that your attitude towards sense pleasures changes. It may change a lot, may change a little, but it will change because all of us, I think, will have heard this kind of cliche, true happiness lies within. You can't find true happiness in the riches and sensual pleasures. It's like pay lip service to that. But when it comes to the nitty-gritty, when you have to make a choice, that's where you know where your conviction lies. And unless you have experienced that inner peace and calm, clarity and brightness and wonder of the pure mind temporarily purified of defilements, you can never really totally believe. You can never that sensual pleasures are inferior and that they truly are incapable of providing the deep inner happiness that we seek. So for many people, caught up in the sensual world, it's not that they are foolish. Even people who are addicted and often very, what we conventionally speaking, intelligent people, aren't they? So how do people get so caught up in sensual pleasures to the extent that they live their lives in ways which are detrimental to their long-term welfare and happiness and create problems in their families and communities? This is not an IQ problem, is it? What I see is that people feel that or conclude that yes, this is a very imperfect, flawed kind of pleasure. It's not the answer to my hopes and dreams, and it's not but it's better than nothing. See, that's the, yes, it's unsatisfactory. Yes, it causes me a lot of suffering and pain along with the pleasure, but it's better than nothing. That's the difficult, that's the trap. With samadhi, you have this proof, no, there is an alternative. So samadhi gives you a perspective on the sensual world. And through the experience of samadhi, you can find that not only your kind of neurotic grasping at sensual pleasures, agitation of mind, the hopes, the fears, far in excess of what could possibly be, could occur, start to settle down. Your values change. Your way of looking at yourself, looking at the world changes. So I would say, in summary, you become a wiser person. But what's the cause of that wisdom? Something that's generally referred to as samatha. Oh, that's not vipassana, that's just samatha. But samatha as part of the whole Eightfold Path, integrated into it, and seen as a learning experience, and digested, and the lessons of it applied to one's life, it can lead to radical changes. So it's not a simple distinction between the path of peace and quietude and the path of wisdom. These things are intimately connected. So we are learning how to learn, and I have a slogan for this year that I've been promoting everywhere I go, especially in Thailand where I live, is enjoy your Buddhist life. Enjoy it. It's wow, what a wonderful thing it is to be able to live this life. And when I say to the monks, Buddhist monk's life is basically a win-win situation. Like if I'm back home in my hermitage in Bak Chong, living out, it's a win. If I come to Vancouver and spend the evening with you, it's a win. It's all wins, that's why it's so great to be a monk. But you can, with the right attitude, the right framing, the right kind of effort, you can feel this. One reason that I see again and again why people become frustrated with meditation, discouraged, is because they're looking for fireworks. They're looking for like huge, wow experiences. And I haven't had any. Or you have these like sad kind of hungry ghost meditators. First time I ever did a meditation retreat, Tanjak, I had this wonderful experience, and it's never come back every time I meditate, it's like, when will I ever experience that pleasant state from 10 years ago? This is like hungry ghost meditation. So, look at the incremental changes in your life, in your commitment to the 5 precepts, here what we call hiriyottappa, intelligent, wise sense of shame, intelligent fear of consequences of foolish actions. See the increase in patience, in kindness, in mindfulness, in calm. Looking up there, you don't see what's right in front of your eyes. Other people can see sometimes, and you can't see it. So you need to be an observer of your experience. Observer of how things change. you can observe, I think, that maybe somebody says something to you really nasty, treats you with contempt even. And how does that feel? Yeah, definitely unpleasant. But then you think, wow, if that had happened a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have been devastated. I wouldn't have been able to sleep at night. And now it kind of hurts, but it's not so bad. Okay, that's one of the fruits of the practice, isn't it? On the other hand, I don't know if you've seen it, how sensitive we become to goodness as we practice this path. Even the smallest acts of kindness can bring tears to your eyes, because you become sensitized to goodness. All kinds of things we learn from practice. One conversation I was having a couple of times, in fact, the last few days, I'm proposing a distinction between shame and guilt. Okay, so these words I know are defined in different ways these days, but this is my take on it. Please. Shame is considered in Buddhist psychology a wholesome mental quality. It's something to be developed. Guilt is considered to be an unwholesome mental state. It is to be abandoned. Shame is, the Pali word for shame is hiri, and the Pali word for guilt, the closest I think is kukucca, which is one of the 5 hindrances. So in practical terms, what would be the distinction? So let's say we look back at some stupid, foolish, cruel thing, whatever, that we did in the past, okay? And we've all done these things, haven't we? Let's be honest. But how do we relate to the memory of those actions now? So with hiri, with shame, this wholesome shame, we analyze what went on there at that moment that you did that thing, or you said that thing. And you're looking at it in this terms of wholesome and unwholesome dhammas. This, we come back to this again and again and again. Kusala, akusala. And in our analysis we see, well, at that moment that I did that thing, there was that much greed in my mind. There was that much anger. There was that much conceit. There was that much agitation, and so on, whatever it might be. And then you look to the kusala side, and there was that much mindfulness. There was that much patience. There was that much metta. And you conclude, well, how can you be surprised at that? If the defilements and so strong, the akusala dhammas, the unwholesome dhammas are so strong, and the kusala dhammas are so weak, what do you suggest? Well, what would you expect? But from that, what we take is, well, the past is the past, but how can I prevent that happening again in the future? And it's clear, I need to reduce the amount of greed in my mind, I need to reduce the amount of anger, the amount of conceit, the amount of heedlessness, etc. And I need to systematically cultivate these qualities of mindfulness, loving kindness, or metta, and patience, and so on, so that I can be confident that in the future, there are those kinds of triggers, those kinds of temptations, those kinds of pressures, that the power of the wholesome dhammas will be stronger than the power of the unwholesome dhammas. See? So this is why shame is a wholesome quality, because it's leading to purposive effort. It's part of the training. With guilt, then there's a sense, I did a bad thing, therefore I'm a bad person. Yeah? And what's the connection? Really? The analogy I've given is, let's say you have a big room like this and you leave all the doors and windows open and some kind of wild animal comes in or some crazed figure with a knife, and you say, oh, this is such a bad room. Why? Well, it's got a wild animal in it. Or it's got a crazy person with a knife in it. It's a bad room. No, the room's just a room. You just don't know how to look after the room. You don't know how to keep the windows closed and the doors closed. There's nothing to do with the room. So this idea of a self, someone who is bad, that's created out of ignorance. That's why it's unwholesome. It's not based on any direct experience. So in Buddhism we say we need to look at the real world. And the real world is the real world of direct experience. And when we look in the real world of the five khandhas, what do we see? Well, we see body, we see feeling tones, we see perceptions, memories, and emotions, sense consciousness, this flow of phenomena. But we cannot find this elusive owner of experience. And I come back again and again to one of the most profound things that are in the very first book on Buddhism. And the author says, in the sentence, it is raining, what does the word it refer to? Yeah. We have these conventions of language. We have to have a subject, a verb, an object, and we assume that, therefore, that's the way that nature is organized. There are subjects and verbs and nouns and all these things. But when we look at our real experience, put down all those received ideas and assumptions and what's really going on, well, yeah, we can't find what we thought was there. And we can't find this owner. And Ajahn Chah would say, if this body was really yours, you could just tell it, don't get old, don't get sick, don't die. You can't. Well, why not? Why can't you? If you're more educated, tend to identify with thinking. And this is a real obstacle in meditation, because if your identity is bound up with you being a smart person, or your value as a human being is dependent on how well you think about things, how analytic your mind is, how well you can think about stuff, then the idea of samadhi and no thought is like death, it's like suicide. It's like, where would I go? But if you think about thinking a little bit, a simple question, have you any idea what you'll be thinking about this time tomorrow? Well, this time 2 or 3 hours in the future. What about 2 or 3 seconds in the future? Even that, you have absolutely no idea what you're going to be thinking. So where's the sense of ownership come from? So take the probably the kind of thinking which seems most expressive of a sense of self, and that's a decision. That's when you really feel, that's me making a decision, making a choice. But if you look at what really happens, you see finally a decision appears in your mind like a sneeze. We think, yeah, I went through the pros and the cons, and was that really the cause of conditions that led to the decision? Maybe you can check it out, see. But thinking does not reveal a thinker. Where is the thinker apart from the thinking? Where is the it apart from the rain? So this is why we just keep coming back, looking again and again. like returning to this idea of belief again. Now, some people say, I really like the meditation stuff and doing mindfulness and all that stuff. That's so cool, that's so, yeah. But you know, that stuff about heaven realms and hell realms, all that, yeah, I think I'll just put that, I can't, doesn't make sense to me. Well, what do you mean by that? And usually it means, I just can't get my head around it. I just can't visualize that. And I say to people, so, I see, so you're taking your ability to create a mental picture of something as a proof of whether or not it exists, is that correct? Because that's what we do. If you can think of something, you can make a picture, or then it seems like real. And something that's you can't picture, you can't think about, you can't create, it seems unreal. And maybe it is real, unreal, but it's not a proof. It's it's not a sure thing, you see. So I don't have a great faith in my imagination. In fact, I have something called aphantasia, so I don't have any mental imagery at all. But I don't believe in my imagination very much because it's let me down on multiple occasions. I do have great trust in the wisdom of the Buddha. So, because the Buddha's never let me down. 50 years, never let me down once. So for me, it's kind of reasonable that when the Buddha teaches something that my imagination balks at, I'm going to go with the Buddha, frankly. I think it's a better bet. But just one, I said I wasn't going to talk for very long here. I'm just going on and on. One final point. Shall I make? No, I'm not going to make the final point. Let's stop there. And yes, thank you for your patience, and I invite some questions.
Sadhu, 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 anumodam.
So please, do we have like a wandering mic or people can't hear?
Joy, do you know how that works?
If you just turn it on, maybe. Yeah.
Turn it on?
And then when it comes out, take the out as well.
Anyone like a question? No, we can take the mic out, they can pass it around. Okay, at this point? Okay, thank you.
I want to continue our conversation around meditation in our culture and ask, what do you make of so many non-religious engagements with Buddhist style meditation in a corporate setting, for instance, maybe in a school setting, and somewhat out of context, but still very useful. Or is it useful? I feel somewhat useful.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I myself a bit kind of unresolved about this, and then I can see, basically I think it's wonderful that like mindfulness and ideas of taking care of your mental health, taking responsibility for your mental health is right in the mainstream of society today. So there's that side, and then there's the other side where, I feel that the teachings of the Buddha, one of the most important features of it is I call it an education system, but it's also a holistic system, which means that you can't just pull out certain elements of it and practice them in isolation and receive the fruits or the benefits that you should. So the question is, well, are those reduced benefits nevertheless worth it? So probably most people would say yes. But as Buddhist teachers or monastics, then it's our role to say, yeah, but actually what mindfulness these days means is getting more and more kind of diffuse. It becomes kind of like a grab bag. So everything good in the world you put into this bag called mindfulness. And in Buddhist psychology, it's a lot more kind of precise than that. And so one of the ways of talking about sati, or Buddhist mindfulness, is it's remembering everything you need to remember to function effectively in any situation. So it's not like a floating quality of mindfulness. Mindfulness always needs an object, and you have to be very clear what is your object of mindfulness at any one moment. And it always has to be within the framework of the context of right view and the Eightfold Path. So, for example, the safe cracker. I don't know if they still do it like this, but and so totally, focused, no thoughts of the past and present, just right there in the present moment, trying to get the combination. Would we call that mindfulness? And if not, why not? Yeah. So this is the question, the ethical dimension. And so in Buddhist psychology, then one element, one aspect of mindfulness is equivalent to memory. So there is an awareness that what you're doing, what the implications are, what the meaning of what you're doing is, what repercussions it will have, and whether or not it will lead to suffering for other beings. So if you're stealing from somebody, it's not just a matter of you're totally there in the moment, and the point is you're taking something that doesn't belong to you, that's going to cause suffering to the owner, and it's going to creating bad karma which you will have to receive the fruits of in the future. So it's not in a vacuum, So this is like more Buddhist attitude. Or you're driving a car, you're not totally in the present moment. You have to bear in mind the highway code, So if being totally in the present moment, where it's just a matter of what's going on in your body, no, you're having to bear certain things in mind and choosing what things to bear in mind, what things are appropriate to that particular situation. That's part of the skill of meditation. So I from far away, I have sort of followed this a little bit, and I did read one critique of modern mindfulness one, which made sense to me. Is when you corporations who are underpaying their workers or making them work long hours, and they're stressed out, and then arranging meditation, mindfulness courses, and saying the reason you're stressed out is because you're not mindful. So I find that a really valid critique, that using that idea, it's come back to the old idea, it's your fault, before it's in the past, in different cultures, it's your fault because it's your karma. Now it's your fault because you don't have enough mindfulness. But it's really, I think, important to remember that the Buddha called his teaching two names mostly. One is the brahmacharya, the holy life. And that was when he was more focused on monastics. But in general, he referred to the Dhamma Vinaya. Okay? So there are two things here. So we all know the word Dhamma. But the word Vinaya, we maybe heard that word and assumed it referred to the monastic code of discipline, which is the most usual usage of that word. But in fact, the Vinaya refers to all the ways in which we try to arrange and to manipulate even or create situations which are most conducive to the practice of Dhamma. Because the practice of Dhamma can't be separated from your surroundings. And some surroundings are more conducive than others. So this includes laws, regulations, conventions, customs, rituals, agreements, all the different tools we have to create the most nourishing and supportive environment. And we can't separate this from Dhamma. And in Thailand, often people get the idea, oh, you're a Buddhist, and if you're a meditator, and you say someone in your office or someone is like treating you with aggressively, or something's going on that's not fair, someone's taking advantage, you just let go. You just practice and send thoughts of loving kindness and forgiveness and let go, and don't get angry and resentful, and that's it. But that's just phase one. That's the Dhamma side. But you have to address the Vinaya side, and the Vinaya side is, yes, but what are we going to do about that person's behavior? You can handle it, but that's not the whole issue here. The whole issue is how that person's behavior is affecting the atmosphere in the family or in the office, and what needs to be done about it. So there always has to be those two sides, the Dhamma and the Vinaya. And often people stress the Dhamma side too much, like as I say with this corporation. Okay, yeah, if you can develop mindfulness, you may have less stress, and you may be able to deal with the unjust requirements of your company. But that doesn't mean that you should just allow that situation to go on. There's two different issues, but that you have to apply yourself to both. Yes, it's back.
So my question is, in situations where we receive critiques or even receive praises, and we might feel upset or we might feel pleasant with that feeling, I'm curious whether in practice should we always investigate where the causes and conditions of how we feel comes from, and what's the boundary to the point that it goes as an overanalyzing something?
Well, again, you have this feedback system, for yourself. If you just get caught in there's analysis and there's just going over and over the same ground again and again. What's the effect on your mind? Is it something uplifting or not? What are the results of that kind of analysis? Of course, often in daily life, you don't have the time anyway to sit and be considering that in such detail, but we can, we kind of know the answer that when there's that sense of self, of me and mine, then that you've lost it, and the less that occurs, the better it is. So that's me and mine, that's the fly in the soup. No matter how good the soup is, you only need one fly. And that fly is me and mine. And then with worldly dhammas, some people get really, so this is one kind of wrong thinking, is people have this sense that if you do a good thing, on the balance, you should get some praise for that. Even if you don't want it. You should, really. And why aren't you getting it? Why aren't you appreciated? And so, this is a teaching I give a lot in Thailand. It's like saying, if you do a good thing, there will be at least five kinds of responses. So this is not actually in the sutta, this is me. It's like, one, people will praise you with a pure intention. They're genuinely impressed and inspired. Secondly, people will praise you with an ulterior motive, flattery. Thirdly, there will be groups of people who are completely indifferent. What's the fuss about? Fourth, there will people be jealous. And fifth, there will be people be angry because you are in some way preventing them getting what they want. So whenever you do a good action, you always think there's 5 groups. And you're ready for it. You're up for it. There's somebody jealous, so group 4's in today. Somebody, this is really nice, a lot of group 1 today. Maybe 1 or 2 group 2's, but and then you're at peace with it. You understand. People are like this, and that's the way people are. But the choice is, whether or not you suffer about it. That's where you can cultivate.
เอาใหม่ให้พระอาจารย์
Cultivate the wisdom, you don't have to suffer. Because nobody, nothing can make you suffer if you have mindfulness and wisdom in your heart. That's the kind of lion's roar of the Buddhist practitioner. Suffering is a co-production. There are the causes within you and all the conditions and the triggers are outside you. But no matter how many triggers there are, if there's not that answering cause of ignorance and craving within you, then there will be no suffering. So that the Dhamma problem is solved, but then you may still have the Vinaya problem. But this is not correct. Something needs to be done about that. So it's not like that's the end of the story. So it's not a kind of a passive thing. So just seeing again and again, where is the craving? When I was first in Thailand, the Luang Por Chah, he didn't speak any other languages. These stories. And people say, well, how do you teach the Westerners? He says, they're just like water buffalo. You just put a ring through their nose and you go like this. And before long they get it. And I'm an Ajahn Chah water buffalo. And I'm really proud of it. But the worldly dhammas always arising, and Ajahn Chah would try to, when so many of his students were just learning Thai and they didn't speak Thai very well, he would choose just like a simple sentence, with very basic words, but really profound meaning that would just stay with you. And when my first year, and this is a teaching, so all my life, is Tuk Prakitpi. Kenya. Tuk Prakitpi. Chai dai talokชีวิต So this is, Tuk means dukkha, suffering, prop because, hit is think, hit is wrong. So dukkha is wrong thinking. And that's just like your mantra. Every time you feel this mental distress or dukkha, you stop and say, where's the craving? Where's the wrong thinking? Where's the expectation? Where's the desire? And that's such a immediate arrow at the source of the problem. And you can try that one. Tuk prakit.
I think as you have AA batteries, that would also solve the problem.
เป็นยังไงคะอาจารย์เขาไม่
Hold him this way.
Sorry if this is a bit convoluted or heavy, but I've been dealing with a conflict between love and impermanence. So I contemplate this a lot. When I say love, I think about love for my mother, which I feel is right. I feel it's, how do I say, selfless. I put aside my anger, I put aside my desires because I must do the next thing for her. But at the same time, when I think about impermanence, I fear losing her. I think about, everything must be gone one day, including her. But please not now, not tomorrow. But at the same time, I feel that the selflessness in love is right. So I'm wondering, do I have the balance correct? Am I too attached? I'm sorry, yeah. That's,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. Familial love of children for parents and parents for children is one of the strongest things in everyone's life. For monks as well. You go into forest monasteries in northeast Thailand, often you'll find there's a nun section, and the abbot's mum is a nun in the monastery. He wants her to be close by and look after her and make sure she's taken care of, give her spiritual teachings. Often one or two sisters there as well. It's really the norm, rather than an exceptional thing. And the Buddha, as you know, praised those who look after their parents as best they can. But at the same time, the Buddha is saying that we have to open our love up to the way things are. That the problem comes when we sort of want to hold on to it and just, don't think about that, it's morbid, or maybe it'll happen one day, but not today. And that's not wise. I don't think you would have got up and asked the question if you didn't already feel some dukkha, some suffering there. And the Buddha is saying we have to train, we have to prepare ourselves every day. That one day, and it could be today, we're going to be separated. And you just have to gently, it's like massaging something into your muscle, really stiff, just have to keep massaging. Yeah, we're going to be separated. We're going to be separated. This separation is coming for sure. You might die before your mum. You don't know that. Yeah. So the idea in Buddha Dhamma is you're ready. You're prepared. Wamai Brahma. This is what that means. Prepared for whatever life may throw at you. But rather than being morbid or being depressive, then recollecting how short and unpredictable and impermanent our life together is, then looked at in the right way, you see the value of every moment. And you think, life is so short, I don't know how much longer I have with my mum. It's just, life's too short to get angry. Life's too short just to get annoyed. Yeah? And so this time is so precious because it's limited and because we don't know how limited. So let's make this time the best time we can. And so after your mother has passed away, you will have a really good feeling, I did my best. I did my duty as best I could. And the thing is, you have to give yourself some slack. You don't have to be the perfect son, okay? Yeah, and sometimes parents are really annoying, you know? And sometimes you just have to take a break. And that doesn't mean you're a bad son, because sometimes you get angry with your mum, because you will. Even, however much you love your mum, I bet you get angry with her sometimes, correct? Sometimes, yeah. And that's all right, that's completely normal. But sometimes you just have to just move away a little bit of space, and then you come back again, refreshed. And too much time together is not good, it's unhealthy. You know, you don't have to be with her every moment of the day that you're at home. Have your own life a little bit also, you know. Don't let that be the only thing in your life. It's wonderful that you have that kind of devotion to your mum, I really admire it. But don't let it become an obsession, so that when your mum does pass away, you fall to bits, because that can happen. So you need your own mindfulness, your own practice. And one of the things you're probably going to have to do is you're going to be there as your mother reaches the end of her life, and she's going to need someone who's strong and calm and wise and loving. And if you're just falling to bits, Mom, don't leave me, and, you know, that's not what she's going to need at the end of her life. So you should be thinking about this. What kind of son's my mum going to need as she gets older and she approaches her death? What kind of son she's going to need if she's in real pain, if she's afraid? Because if she's afraid and you're afraid, there's nothing you can give her. Yeah. So it really means you need to be developing these qualities so that you can be a true refuge to your mother as she approaches the end of her life. You know, when old people just start going over the same old things again and again. Oh no, here we go again. This story, I've heard this 100 times. And the old person is telling the story like they never told it to you before. So I have a tip here. Don't think about it as like content, but think about it as like chanting together. You know, like if you're doing a Buddhist chant, you know, with family, it's so, you don't go, oh, not this one again. Chanted that one yesterday. Chanted that one yesterday. You know, it's just, we're sharing this story, and it's the warmth and the connection. You don't have to be, whatever the content was. Yeah, you've heard that before. But it's like a chant. Yeah, it's one of our favorite chants. You know, we do this one a lot. You know, every day.
Can you explain about anatta?
I can.
Please.
One of my favorite topics. I had a conversation with someone yesterday who's studying emptiness and asked for some advice to study emptiness. I said, no need. Just fold it into the analysis of anatta, because in Theravada it's more or less the same thing. You don't want like emptiness to become like this thing that you have to realize. It's just an absence. So in analogy I gave is, let's say you believe that this hall is radioactive. Okay? So let's say you have access to Geiger counters, and we all get a Geiger counter, and we go every single service waiting for this click, 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 and there's no click, 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 silence. And then we say, oh, no radioactivity in this hall. But it's not like you have attained the state of no radioactivity. It's not a thing, you know. It's just what you thought was there isn't. And that's anatta. So there is continuity. And there's the thing, I think the key idea is, this is one of my favorite things, is there are no nouns. Everything is verbs. Even nouns are verbs. Okay? That's anatta. Okay, so if you look at a mountain, okay, well that's the most solid thing you could think of. You know, the mountain outside Vancouver, for instance. But if you were to have a time-lapse camera, and you could shoot like 100,000 years or something, and then compress it down to 30 seconds, it would just go like that and go down, go that way, arise and pass away. So mountain is a verb, it's not a noun. Your body's a verb, your feelings are verbs, your perceptions are verbs, your thoughts, your emotions, your sense, everything are verbs. And that verb nature of reality is what we call anatta. So there's not one fixed thing standing behind it, controlling it, being affected by it. So this was, you know, the teaching I gave just now about it is raining. What is the it which is raining? Or we say, I'm short, or I'm tall, I feel happy, I remember, I don't remember, I think, I like, I see, I hear. And because you have this word I, you think there must be something there called I. But then, okay, let's have a closer look. I'm tall, that means I'm short, that means your body's short. You know, I'm feeling happy. It's like a happy feeling arising in the mind. I remember. A memory is arising and passing away in the mind. I think, a thought arising and passing away in the mind. An emotion arising and passing away in the mind. I see, I hear, sense consciousness. When you get down to the real world of experience and not all the ideas about it, then this is what you find. You cannot find that self, that independent, self-existent owner of experience. That's what anatta is teaching. Yes.
Chitta. Verb.
Yeah.
Relation to everything?
Hmm?
In relation to everything?
Yeah. I mean, certainly it depends on what the context and so on, but I think this is one of the teachings which is in harmony with the Tibetan teachings, like Dzogchen, all those things, all that's way, but it's actually very, very, very much the same. It's this what they mean by empty is like without a self, and it's knowing, empty knowing. That's the nature of mind in every Buddhist school that I'm aware of. It's knowing, but there's not a knower, there's not an independent entity. So the knowing is inseparable from what is known. So it's a flow. It's a verb. Yeah. Yes, so.
You made the comment that you have aphantasia, which is something.
I'm sorry, you have to speak up.
You made the comment that you have aphantasia, which is something I also experience. I was wondering if there's anything you said about it, or if it's just ordinary.
I'm really interested. You tell everybody what it's about. Come up here to the microphone.
So aphantasia is if you close your eyes that you can't see anything, you can't picture anything. Essentially, when I close my eyes, I've always seen black, and that's about it. Except certain times in meditation, I see colors, and this is actually what alerted me to the fact, and talking to friends and colleagues, that actually my experience is a little bit different. So if I say green to my friend Thomas, he sees green objects. And so I've always wondered if this clearly has an impact, but whether it's just ordinary or if there's anything you've noticed about aphantasia that changes your approach or your thinking or anything like that.
1975, I walked away from Dharamsala a very disappointed young man because I realized there was no way I could really progress in Tibetan meditation practice, like seed syllables and this and that. It was like I could fly easier than I could do that. So it has conditioned the kind of choices I've made in my practice. But I think like most people before, there's only been a word for this for some years, and all of us sort of grew up and we just thought it was normal. I didn't realize it's kind of weird thing. I found out really with monks and other meditators and talking about their meditation experience. And I realized, while my ability to teach certain kinds of meditation is severely constricted, any kind of meditation dependent on visualization, I can't speak from direct experience. It make me a lousy meditation teacher in certain respects. Personally, I love it. I think it's wonderful. Well, it is because it's always been this way. But I mean, speak frankly, as a celibate monk, having a complete inability to create pornographic images in my mind, has been a blessing from me. So I've never regretted it at all. How it impacts my life, I get lost very easily. I could sit in a car and follow the same route 20 times, and then you say, take me on the 21st time and say, do you turn left here or right, and I wouldn't be able to answer. I have zero ability to remember visual phenomena, visual data. But I have a more, I can't say it's compensatory, perhaps it is, but I have a real love of language and words. So, yeah, that's sort of a nice thing. But, yeah, I think everyone's brain is probably a little bit kind of weird, but we just never, because we can't compare, we just assume there is this kind of normal brain that everyone has, and it's probably a little bit like ours, but who knows, Yeah, so my memory is, I have a kind of a not schizophrenic, but I have a memory which in certain regards is like razor sharp, and in other regards is almost like Alzheimerian. It's that bad. But yeah, that's just me, my life is like this. Are you at peace with this? Are you happy with it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Is emptiness and voidness are the same thing? In English they sound the same to me.
Just different translations of the same word, yeah. I mean, this is a problem with reading in translation. Different translators have like their pet terms, and something I think is like an ethical point is that if you translate a technical term in an unusual way or not the usual convention, you should have a footnote to say, this word you probably met elsewhere as emptiness, but in this text I prefer the word voidness. Whether or not you give some reasons for that, that's another matter. But I think out of respect for your reader, if you use unorthodox translations, you should let them know that you're doing so, because it causes a lot of confusion when translators don't do that. But if we're going back sort of some time, there wasn't really a consensus about how these words were translated. And it's like the word jit or jitta. Do you translate that as mind or as heart? And there was a long time where you had some people with mind, some people with heart, some people with heart, stroke, mind, and the difficulty is that it covers heart and mind. And if you choose heart, then you have you run the risk that people will think on the more sort of cognitive, emotional side and overlook the cognitive side. If you translate it as mind, then you lose that sense of the emotional side. So there's no real answer to that except that you all agree, and then you have to expand a little bit, expand what you mean. So I think there was a period of translating of Mahayana texts where some translators preferred voidness and some preferred emptiness. But I think everyone these days more or less translates it as emptiness. That's my impression. But yet, same thing.
A brief preamble to my question, if you'll indulge me. It's only been the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity, or taken the opportunity, to really delve into Buddhism in its almost intellectual way, to actually reading about the text. And I was quite excited when I heard of YouTube the other day, by yourself, that talked about the education, Buddhism being more an educational system as opposed to faith, especially within the Middle East. And you talked about Islam, Christianity. And as part of that, as you said, it's true because I believe. And I believe because it's true. And I thought, wow, okay. But as an educational system, it put all together for me, well, in my opinion, for myself, it put together more how the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, dependent origination, all these concepts came to me, and there's a paradigm here that I can live to. And it gave me a lot of peace, because it gave me a paradigm. But where I struggled actually was something you said at the beginning today, it was reincarnation. Because I hear about, I recently, last year, I met a Buddhist monk in Thailand that said he did not want to be reborn. That was his goal. That's an interesting goal. And I hear about I read about the soul, that there is not a soul within Buddhism, at least that's my understanding. There's not supposed to be the sense of self. But then there's something that's being reborn through reincarnation. And it was almost, I was starting to think, is this a metaphor that I should be not paying a lot of attention to, or is this something that reincarnation is an important part of the journey of becoming Buddhist, or being Buddhist? So if you could speak to reincarnation, rebirth.
Yeah, I usually use rebirth rather than reincarnation. Let's go back to that point that I made, and that the reason for so much conflict in religious circles these days, particularly in the belief system, family of religions, is this idea that somehow the intensity of your faith is the proof of what you believe in, and which I carry as a circular thinking. It's true. How do you know it's true? It's because I believe it. The moment I heard it, the moment I read it, I just knew. And as Buddha said, no, you didn't just know, you just believed. There's two different things. And then so you get, well, I believe because it's true because I believe. It goes round. And so there's no dialogue, there's no... And one of the most profound teachings, if you're anyone familiar with the Majjhima Nikaya and the Chanki Sutta, is where the Buddha introduced this idea of caring for the truth, which he calls Satyanuraka. And Satyanuraka means that you don't claim that something is true merely because you believe it, because belief is not a proof. It's possible. I don't think anyone can refute the fact that you can believe 100% of something that's not true. So merely taking that intensity of your faith as somehow a proof that it must therefore be true is incorrect. So the Buddha says that we care for the truth by not claiming to know things we only believe. So in the case of rebirth, again, people say this is like a flagship teaching, or you're Buddhist, you're the ones who believe in rebirth and reincarnation. But we say, well, what's your response to that? And I would say that the correct Buddhist response is, I don't know. That's the response. Oh, you believe? No, I don't know. But I believe. And I have certain grounds to believe, supporting arguments in favor of rebirth, but they do not constitute a proof of rebirth. And I would, amongst the supporting, I think there are strong supporting arguments in favor of rebirth, the reality of rebirth. First of all, the Buddhist teachings, which so many of them refer to, although they're not the heart of them, they refer to them in many cases. So if you are to refute the teaching of rebirth, then you have to say that the Buddha's teachings are just a mixture of true and false things, and that the Buddha was completely deluded. And as I say, my analogy I've used many times. So let's say you're living in Kansas, or what's a really flat Canadian problem? Manitoba or something like that.
Yes.
And there's a twister coming, and you just find yourself in a strange land. But fortunately, you have a map. Some kind person has got a map, but you don't really know how trustworthy this map is. So you walk along, you look to the left, look to the right, and you check it with your map. And you say, yeah, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct, yes. And after a while you get this real trust. This is a really good map. It's correct in every detail. And so this is like pre-Google Maps on your telephone. You sit down and you open up this map, you see, and it's this paper map. And then you see up here something called mountains, and they're like 5,000 meters high. And your common sense and your imagination, your ability, that's what I'm talking about, your ability to visualize this, I can't, because all you've ever seen is like a bump in the landscape, 50 meters is a big deal, let alone 5,000 meters. But I think it's reasonable to say, given that this is one map, that if this particular area of the map, which you have walked through, is completely accurate, it's reasonable to assume that areas you haven't walked through are also accurate. It's not a proof, but I think quite a good supporting argument. Then, sorry, from going on from that, then there's the recollection of past lives by many meditators over the last 2,500 years, many monks. With regard to this kind of phenomenon, monks are not allowed to talk about these things with lay people, so they're not so widely known in the lay community, but much more monks. So if a monk in confidence, like a senior monk, like Ajahn Chah or someone like this, would say they remember the past lives, and there are three possibilities, aren't there? He's telling the truth, he's deliberately telling you a fib, he's lying, or he's deluded. So if it's a monk of that stature, you can more or less cross out the deliberate lying. So there's two two choices again. He's telling the truth or he's deluded. And in many cases, seeing these monks and their wisdom and their practice, then you think, yeah, I'm more inclined to think they're telling the truth. But I think for a secular audience, probably the most convincing supporting argument is the recollection of past lives by children. And you may be familiar with the work of Ian Stevenson, people in the University of Virginia, where they've been researching past life memories of children for many years now. And given the prejudice against this teaching of this likely reality of rebirth, they are incredibly rigorous in their, sometimes overly rigorous, I would say, in what evidence they will accept. And they have now a catalogue of 2,500 children all around the world, not only in Buddhist and in cultures that believe and still a belief in rebirth, but in non-Buddhist cultures. And I think that's a very strong supporting argument. Then there are other people who can recollect past lives through hypnosis. And again, very, very convincing. So I would say, as a Buddhist, I can't remember past lives, but I have very strong confidence based upon these four key arguments. My trust in the wisdom of the Buddha, my confidence in the veracity of reports of past lives from senior monastics and meditators, recollection of past lives by children around the world, and the accounts of recollection of past lives through hypnosis. So, yeah, just to stress once again, I'm not saying therefore rebirth is true. I'm saying these are, for me, very powerful supporting arguments in favor of it. And the fact that the Buddha talks about past lives should be related to his insistence that all the things that he knew, he said, was like the leaves in the forest. And all he taught was like the leaves in his hand. You familiar with that teaching? So therefore the teachings on rebirth are as a leaf in his hand. It's not a leaf in the forest. He felt it was really helpful to adopt that belief, a provisional, contingent belief in rebirth as a foundation for practice of the Eightfold Path.
Thank you. If I could just, one last corollary to that, that argument makes sense to me because everything else seems to make sense to me at this point. I've had the benefit with my wife to, as her parents passed away, to have an experience of speaking to the spirit through a channeler for about an hour and a half. And it totally disrupted my sense of reality. And I struggled with that. And at one point just dismissed it as, not dismissed it, sorry, I didn't just, I put it off to the side and said, I'll deal with it later. I found it a bit disruptive to my sense of what is real. But I accept, I agree with your argument that it makes logical sense that if everything else follows logically and as an educational path that has a great deal of intellectual merit, that this would also follow suit. So thank you.
It's 43. So we go to 9 o'clock. We've got a quarter of an hour more for anyone. Or if you've had enough, you can
squeeze everything out.
Can you please speak more about joy and bring that into practice?
Yeah, first of all, I would like peace of mind. You know, that people, a lot of people say to meditate more to realize peace of mind. So what is peace of mind? Nobody knows. You know, and mostly people confuse it with relaxation, which is why when people become relaxed, they fall asleep in meditation because they think, you know, they got it. So what is it? I say, well, start off with what you do know. You know all the things that are not peaceful. And that's where your work lies. And the analogy I like is Michelangelo's horse, when somebody says, how did you create such a lifelike horse from a block of rock? And so Michelangelo apparently said, I didn't, I just chipped away all the bits that weren't the horse. and I like this analogy for meditation. So what's peace? I don't know, I just chip all the things that are not peaceful away, and what's left, that's peace. And I think that really key teaching of the Buddha is that there is this unity of clear vision and virtue, which earlier on I was saying, like dukkha from wrong thinking, but that the more clearly you see the nature of things, the more the virtues of the heart arise naturally. So I would say that the more mindful you are, the more aware you are, the more you're looking, the more joy arises, because joy just is ready to arise. You know, you stop holding it down and repressing it. You know, it's not like joyful 24 hours a day, but there is this joyfulness that is just there when you're not sabotaging it or concreting it over with views and opinions and so on. I think immediately, like mudita and opening it, it's just saying it's not like Pollyanna, it's positive thinking. It's just open your eyes to all the goodness around you. It's just so much. It's everywhere. Just small, modest. I was talking to somebody again in Portland the other day, and I've been talking about how when you perform a good action without desire for any kind of reward, you gain a treasure. It's like a noble treasure in your heart, and it's there as a source of joy your whole life. Whereas if you perform a good action but you have some ulterior motive, and it might just be you want some praise or you want someone to like you or whatever, even quite a mild kind of defilement like that means that when you register that in your brain, you remember it as a transaction. And when you remember it, you don't feel any joy. So again, this is something to look at, and I'm saying the recollection of the good actions you performed in your life is a constant source of joy. And if you're down and you're depressed and you're lonely and you're sick, and you bring to mind sort of holidays you've had and sensual pleasures, you feel worse. But if you bring some goodness that you performed you just immediately feel good and joy in your heart. And when that joy arises, you can make that joy your meditation object, and to take you to samadhi. So in Thailand, we use this a lot for people at the end of their lives, particularly people who've never meditated before. So how can you help someone at that stage? Well, there's the son or the daughter or someone to sit and to encourage them to recollect some good things that they feel really proud that they've done in their lives. You write them down, and usually there'll be one or two that are really powerful ones. And that's their meditation object. When they're struggling with pain and fear, do you remember that? How that felt? Just feel that again. How you felt that day when you did that. That's something, that's your refuge. So it's a really powerful meditation. And so I've been talking about this in a Dhamma talk in Portland, and a gentleman who was putting us up for the night, he was saying that really resonated with me. He said, and it's something that happened in my life. I said, please tell me, I love these stories. And he said he was 16 years old, he just had his first car, he was driving along, and he saw a little boy crying by the side of the road. So he stopped the car and he said, what's wrong? And the boy had been given some money by his mum to go to the shop and buy some milk. So this is in the days when milk was sold in bottles. On the way home, he tripped over, broke the bottle, and the milk was all spilled. And he was shocked, but he was also too afraid to go home. He was afraid what his mum would say and that he'd get scolded. And so this gentleman took the boy to the shop, bought him another bottle of milk, and sent him on his way. And he said that's like 60 years ago. And still, I think about that, and I bring tears to my eyes. I just feel. So it's not like in some big dramatic acts of heroic bodhisattva goodness. It's something just really like this can just bring so much joy to your life. Just you have all these memories, and you don't let them just fade away. Bring them up and cultivate them, and write them down even.
At the moment of death, your last thought takes you to the next. Can you explain something like that?
Yeah, so it's a verb, it's a flow, it's a stream. So the classic analogy is of like two candles. So what's a candle flame? It's not a thing, it's a verb. It's a chemical reaction. Oxygen, the wick, and so on. And then when one candle burns down, then you can light a second candle from the first one. So it's not like the flame in the first one died and was reborn in the second one. It's a continuous process, but the physical basis of that process changes. And this is rebirth. So the physical basis of this flow of phenomena disappears, returns to the world of earth, fire, water, air, but the process continues. And that's what rebirth.
And your last thought affects where you go, I hear.
Yeah, again, I think these days people talk about this too much, and it's, we've got to make sure the very last thought is a good one because that influences the next one. And yeah, that's true, but it doesn't kind of cancel out all the good things. You have one sort of, petty or sort of naughty thought, and that sort of extinguishes everything that led to before. But its result is felt first, and it might be just for a very short time. And then the good karma that you created, then that will have its effect afterwards. So it's good to give importance to the quality of the mind in the last part of life, but it's not like, oh no, I've just screwed it up altogether. one bad thought and all that stuff's gone out the window. It's not like that.
I'm going to excuse that since my master and Kuba Ajahn here, I'm going to ask in Thai. I hope that will be okay. พระอาจารย์คะคือได้เสียลูกชายโดยอุบัติเหตุเมื่อ5 ปีที่แล้วต้นไม้ล้มใส่เขาแล้วก็เสียพ่อกับแม่ไปตัวเองเป็นคนที่ปฏิบัติอยู่แล้วนะคะแต่ว่าพบว่าการสูญเสียลูกคือเป็นความทุกข์ที่ยิ่งใหญ่แม้จะนั่งสมาธิหรืออะไรแล้วก็ฟังพระอาจารย์หลวงพ่อชาตลอดเวลา5 ปีที่ผ่านมาความทุกข์ไม่ได้ลดลงแต่เปลี่ยนสภาพไปค่ะทีนี้อยากขอคำแนะนำไกด์ที่จะทำให้รู้สึกว่าตัวเองควรจะปฏิบัติแบบไหนอย่างไรคะ
คือการสูญเสียลูกนี่ก็เป็นความทุกข์อันยิ่งอะไรยิ่งกว่านี้เป็นที่สุด แต่ว่าเมื่อลูกหลับไปแล้วเนี่ยก็จะมีข้อคิดอะไรอย่างเงี้ยเมื่อเช้าหรือเมื่อวานนี้เขามีคำแนะนำสำหรับแม่ทั้งหลายอาตมาก็แนะนำว่าลูกของแม่ไม่ใช่ลูกของแม่ใช่ไหมไม่ใช่ลูกของแม่
แต่ว่าเคยอยู่ในท้อง
เป็นผู้ที่เคยมาอยู่อาศัยแต่ชาติก่อนเราก็ไม่รู้อาจจะเป็นพ่อเป็นแม่ของเราเป็นพี่เป็นน้องหลายภพหลายชาตินะอันนี้ก็เป็นชาติหนึ่งที่มาอยู่อาศัยแล้วก็มีบุญแค่นี้ที่มาอยู่กับเราแค่นี้แต่ว่าในอันนี้ก็เป็นวิธีคิดวิธีมองเป็นเรื่องของโยนิโสมนสิการแต่ในภาคปฏิบัติคือว่าการปฏิบัติต่อความคิดเศร้าโศกเสียใจเนี่ยมันจะมีสุดตรงสองอย่างหนึ่งคือเก็บกดพยายามไม่คิดแต่ใช้สมาธิเพื่อเก็บกดเป็นก็ไม่ได้ผลอีกทางหนึ่งก็คือปล่อยให้มันคิดไปเรื่อยๆสองทางนี้ไม่ดีคือเราเปรียบเทียบว่าความเศร้าโศกนั้นเหมือนกับมีแผลสดแผลสดนี้ไม่ใช่ว่าปุ๊บปั๊บมันจะหายตามความต้องการมันก็มีเวลาของมันแต่หน้าที่ของเราคือรักษาความสะอาดของแผลแล้วแผลมันก็จะหายตามธรรมชาติของมันทีนี้ในการเปรียบเทียบกับจิตใจที่มีแผลก็ความเศร้าโศกเสียใจในสิ่งที่ต้องระวังสิ่งที่เป็นสิ่งที่จะทำให้แผลอักเสบคือความคิดสุดโต่งสองอย่างบางวิธีก็คือพอเราคิดเรื่องลูกคิดแล้วเป็นความคิดเกิดขึ้นและมีสติตรงนี้ก็ไม่เก็บกดไม่วิ่งตามรับแล้ววางรับแล้ววางรับแล้ววางอย่างนี้ต้องฝึกอย่างนี้
ให้มีสติและคิดได้แล้วก็ให้
แล้ว
รู้ตัว
อย่างคือพอเป็นความคิดนะเป็นแค่ความคิดที่เกิดขึ้นแล้วก็แผ่เมตตาขอให้ลูกมีความสุขนั้นทุกครั้งที่คิดถึงลูกเราก็เปลี่ยนเป็นระลึกถึงเปลี่ยนจากคิดถึงเป็นระลึกถึงขอให้มีความสุขแล้วลูกเป็นจิตจะเป็นบุญเป็นกุศลในขณะนั้นเราต้องสร้างนิสัยใหม่จิตใจของเรามันตกร่องมานานแล้วตอนนี้เราก็ต้องฝืนสร้างนิสัยใหม่นึกถึงเมื่อไหร่อย่าให้ตกร่องนึกถึงแล้วว่าขอให้มีความสุขมีความสุขขึ้นมาอย่างนี้ก็จะค่อยๆดีขึ้นThis was somewhat private, but the Dhamma point I think I'd like to share with everyone is dealing with grief. And when we lose a loved one, the analogy is of a wound, an open wound. So if you have an open wound of any kind, of course it's not going to disappear immediately. But so what is your main responsibility is to keep that wound clean and allow it to heal naturally. And here the analogy is that when we are grief-stricken, when we lose someone we love, the mind tends to fall in one or two extremes, or both. One is to kind of repress the memories, and that may start off with just trying to keep busy all the time, or people can use meditation techniques. Basically, I don't want to think about this. Go away, repress it. The other is you just allow your mind to go over and over and over and over all of the things that bring up that emotion, whether it's regrets or whatever it might be. So in both cases, then it's like you're allowing germs into the wound, and it's never going to get better. It's going to get infected. So the way to deal with it is we have that mindfulness when the thought of the loved one arises in the mind. You receive it. You don't kind of push it away and you don't follow it, you just receive it and you put it down and you say, may you be well, may you be happy. So every time you do that, then you're creating a new habit. It's not regrets and sadness and grief or repression and stress and strife. It's may you be well, may you be well. And that metta, that love, that kindness is expressed in a wholesome way. And in that way, then the grief won't disappear immediately, but it will be like a clean wound, which will gradually knit together and heal eventually. Diane? Ample? Okay, well, I think it's probably enough for this evening. Thank you for being such a patient audience.